Collateral consequences are additional penalties triggered by a guilty plea or finding that are added to the sentences of people who have been adjudicated in the United States criminal justice system of crimes classified as misdemeanors and felonies. These hidden penalties are the roadblocks and barriers that stop you from getting out of jail or prison and staying out for good. These penalties play an integral part in the mass incarceration movement, which started in the 1970s that gave governments at the local, state, and federal levels more power to enforce a covert mindset that became their corporate banner, which was and still is lock 'em up and throw away the key. Now, that power had a devastating effect on the criminal justice system, so much so that it changed the Department of Rehabilitation into the Department of Rehabilitation and Corrections, and from the Department of Rehabilitation and Corrections into the Department of Corrections. So that means it went from giving people a second chance to taking it away and then giving it back, but guaranteeing that they would not succeed in staying out. Now, all of a sudden, a man convicted of 34 felonies is not only running for president, he has a chance of winning. Which is crazy because even with all those collateral consequences, a felony conviction, and even 34 of them, does not bar you from running for president or holding that office in the United States. But in this case, he gets that golden opportunity because in this country, privilege has its advantages. Let me explain. Now, there are three factors that allow Mr. 34 felonies to take advantage of this golden opportunity. Number one, he's a former president. Enough said. Number two, he's rich. We all know that history and statistics prove that the more money, power, and status you have, the less likely you will be caught, and if caught, the less likely you will be punished, and if punished, the less likely it will be severe. And number three, he's white. Now, you can get mad at me all you want, but we all know that if Mr. 34 felonies was like the majority of people who get caught up in the criminal justice system, who are just regular poor and black, and by the way, if you're poor, it really doesn't matter what color the skin is when it comes to the process of adjudication and sentencing. However, whether you're for him or against him doesn't matter. We all know if Mr. 34 felonies, the one who disrespects the rule of law, the one who threatens witnesses, judges, and lawyers, the one who is promising revenge, the one who violates gag orders, and the one who lies because the truth is not in him, if he was just regular poor and black, he would have been up under the jail a long time ago. Plus, they would have brought that act right and tightened his behind up. Now, I said all that to say this. God is not a felon. Yeah, I know you're shaking your head in disbelief, and believe me, I was shocked too when I looked at a post on social media that my nephew shared about how people, and particularly blacks, are supposed to be identifying with Mr. 34 felonies because he's a felon. But what got my attention the most was the part that he shared about someone saying that the God they serve is a felon, which sounds like a justification for identifying with Mr. 34 felons. I was like, nephew, I have to say something about this, so stay tuned for my next post. His response was, bet, okay, So here's my response. Listen, I can't find any reason why anyone, let alone anyone who claims to be a Christian, will let something like that come out of their mouth. However, that statement proves two things. Number one, they don't know God. And this leads me to my next point, which is number two, they don't know God because they don't read His Word. So let me help you. First of all, God is a God of righteousness who created the heavens and the earth. We are His creation, so which one of us can find Him guilty of anything, let alone something that we call a felony? Second, Jesus, who is God in the flesh, is a righteous Savior. He lived a sinless life to fulfill the righteous requirement of the law, so that through the salvation He provided for us, we could take part in His righteousness. That's why when they brought Him before the scribes and Pharisees, there was nothing to charge Him with because He didn't break the law, so they paid some folks to lie on Him. And when they brought Him before Pilate, he too found that He did nothing wrong and broke no laws. But to keep a revolt from happening, He had Him crucified because when given a choice, the people chose a convicted felon over Him. Now the first part of 1 Peter chapter 3 verse 8 says, "For Christ also suffered for sin once, the righteous for the unrighteous, that He might bring us to God." And 2 Corinthians chapter 5 verse 21 says, "He made Him who knew no sin to become a sin offering for us, so that in Him we might become the righteousness of God." Now the question is, if God is a righteous God, and He is, and if Jesus is God and is a righteous Savior, and He is, who was found guilty of nothing, then how can God be a felon? I don't know what God they're claiming to serve, but the God I serve is not a felon. He's the Lord of Lords, the King of Kings, and a righteous judge who is coming back soon, and He's bringing all the smoke. The next question I have is, are you ready?